What's going on, guys? So, as you could tell by the title, for this video, I wanted to go over some of the hardest platinums that I've gotten so far since I've switched from Xbox over to PlayStation in 2019. Now, in that time period, I've managed to attain a total of 57 platinum trophies. Within those 57 completed games, I wanted to make sure that the criteria for any game chosen centered around the idea of me never wanting to do them again.
Hey, this man just, I don't want to do this no more.
See, in general, some difficult completions can either be really long, maybe a little tedious, but I made sure that not only are these platinums tough to get, but you couldn't pay me to try and go for these again. Some more than others. Not necessarily because the games are bad or not fun, but because of the sheer amount of time and effort required. Now, let me preface my list by first saying that I'm sure, matter of fact, I know that there are more difficult platinums out there, but this list is based on the 57 games that I have platinum so far. Also, just to be safe, spoiler warning for some of these games. So without wasting any more time, let's get into number 5 on the list. Yakuza Like a Dragon. This game was fantastic. See, I'm a big fan of the RPG genre, but this game is an RPG like nothing I've ever played before. From the wacky side content, the Dragon Quest inspired protagonist, and the actually entertaining story, I highly recommend this game to people who enjoy turn-based RPGs. So what exactly makes this a difficult platinum in my book? Well, there's one trophy in particular, Victory of the Millennium, which is the trophy for having completed the final Millennium Tower, the game's hardest optional dungeon. Not only is Victory of the Millennium likely to be the hardest trophy on this game's list, it's also likely to be the last trophy you get before the platinum. On PSN, only 1.3% of players have gotten this platinum. But on psnprofiles.com, about 15% of the registered users have it. 15% is actually quite good. So if you're a trophy hunter, it's not incredibly difficult if making use of a proper guide and roadmap. But the sheer amount of time to do everything, followed by the preparation for the final Millennium Tower, is truly the reason why I have it here. As I've said, Like a Dragon is an RPG. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with RPGs, they typically have a lot of things to do in them. This game is no different. You have to complete 40 side quests. You have to become best friends with people, some of them homeless. You have to go back to school and get a degree. You have to build a successful business from scratch, the likes of which Jeff Bezos has never seen before. You have to become the Yakuza version of Ash Ketchum and be the very best that no one ever was. You have to become a Mario Kart expert and apply those skills in real life. You have to sing karaoke, become a gardener, hire some hookers, get a job, watch some movies, see someone get run over by a car, get into a relationship. You know what? Let me stop right there. I think you all get the point. If some of this sounds like things you already do and like you'll have to be living a double life, that's because that's what the game kind of feels like at times. It feels like you're living a second life. Like a life simulator where instead of creating sim characters based on your family members and crushes, you're instead forced to play as a guy with a bad hairdo. One that's so bad at every turn someone wants to punch you in the face for it. If all of this sounds like it can take up a long amount of time, that's because it does. And despite everything, at the end of it all, when it's just you and a giant tower standing in the way of your platinum, that's when the grind can really start. I'm not going to get too deep into the details, but just know you'll have to level every party member to 99, level at least one job for each party member to 99, and the rest of their jobs to at least 30. Get some really good pieces of gear, stock up on as much useful items as you can, and have a strategy guide handy to have a shot. The more you prepare, the easier of a time you'll have going for this. But when it was all said and done, was it worth it? Absolutely. Anything you work hard for will feel worth it most times. But would I do it over? Definitely not. I would, without a question, play and beat this game again, but I wouldn't go out of my way to platinum it again. Next on this list, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. This game has a platinum percent of 0.1 on PSN and 2.4% on PSN profiles, and for good reason. But first, let's talk about that 0.1%. See, Call of Duty is viewed as a multiplayer game now. So most players tend to glance right over the campaign and any other single player content these days. Call of Duty is also one of the most popular games and franchises out there, one that most casual gamers know and love to play. So the 0.1% on PSN doesn't come as too much of a surprise to me, since most people probably buy this game annually just to have a good time online with their friends. But the game is still only 2.4% on PSN profiles amongst other trophy hunters and registered users. And one trophy in particular stands out above the rest: Reunited with Fidelina. The description of this trophy says, defeat the mama back and saved your dear friend. All it's really asking you to do is to basically beat the Dead Ops arcade mode. Now, on paper, this probably doesn't sound too bad until you boot up the Dead Ops arcade mode and realize that you ain't In all seriousness, though, this thing is tough as hell. So, what is Dead Ops Arcade? It's a game mode in the Black Ops series that functions as a twin stick, top down arcade shooter. The premise is pretty simple. You enter a round and defeat all zombies before moving on to the next round. To finally reach the end and have a shot at the mama back, you must make it to round 64, and each player is only awarded 3 lives to start. The whole thing can take a couple hours to complete, and even if you game over, you start from the beginning. To have any shot at achieving this, you have to play a lot in order to familiarize yourself with the mechanics, weapons, abilities, and rooms, so you know what enemies to expect and where they'll spawn. You can also keep a guide handy to help you if you're entering territory you've never seen, but it can be difficult to stop to read and prepare when playing with randoms. Beating this mode and earning this trophy was so ridiculously difficult to do at the start that since launch, it's been made easier with a patch by the inclusion of an advanced start option for solo play. This basically introduces a checkpoint system and allows you to pick up from your most recent checkpoint, but at the downside, as I said, is that it's only available solo, which means it can still be difficult to get done if you find the mode innately hard and would typically rely on someone to carry you. Not to mention, it's a Call of Duty game. So naturally, some of the multiplayer trophies are going to have RNG attached to them. I managed to snag this platinum after over 6 months, and I've never looked back since. At number 3, Everybody's Golf. As you can see by the date of my first trophy earned and the date of my platinum trophy, this game took me over a year to platinum. Now, admittedly, it took me that long because I didn't play this game with the intention of completing it. See, I've been a fan of the Hot Shots Golf series for a very long time, since first playing it on the PS2. My older brother and his friends and I still share a rivalry with each other, and we play every iteration of this game that comes out. So when I first downloaded this, I simply played the game until I beat it so I could unlock all of the courses. That way, anytime I'd get together with my brother and his friends, in person or online, we'd have all of the courses available to us. My first trophy was in July of 2020, but it wasn't until July of 2021, a year later, that I would start to actively pursue the platinum. On PSN, 0.6% of players have this platinum trophy, and I listed it here as number 3. So, what exactly makes this platinum so difficult? The 2 trophies that stand out are Versus Master and Secret Master. The reason defeating all the Versus characters is so hard is because you have to do it twice. You first have to complete the game by beating all the versus characters from ranks 1 through 6, but once you do, the game presents you with a new challenge of beating them again, this time introducing their revenge variation. The problem is that they can only be attempted once per day, and you only get one chance. So if you lose, they go away and you have to wait until the next day to challenge another character. This means that after beating the versus characters the first time around and completing the story, you need a minimum of 18 days to face off against them again. And that's assuming you're beating the harder revenge variants on your first try. And although you can technically give yourself unlimited chances by backing up your save to the cloud and restoring it back every time you take a loss, the fact that you have to jump on every day for 18 days to accomplish this is really annoying. To put it into perspective, you have to basically develop a new habit out of playing the game. It's just very tedious and time consuming. That sort of time constraint and commitment is part of what made this one so difficult. You see, because 18 days isn't even the worst part. Alongside the standard versus characters comes the trophy for defeating all secret versus characters, which only spawn after fulfilling certain requirements. Here's a list of the secret versus characters and the requirements to get them to spawn. And while the majority of them aren't that bad, the last two are absolutely ridiculous, as it boils down to RNG pretty much. For those that don't know, a condor in this game is hitting a hole in one on a fucking par 5. If you know golf, already that should sound insane to you. There are only a few holes where it's possible to score a condor: Alpine Forest, hole 12, Eagle City, hole 3, and Kanaloa Beach, hole 17. You need specific weather conditions, tee length, and a custom club upgraded with a certain amount of power. The amount of power you get per upgrade is also RNG. So it's possible that after maxing out a club, giving it only power upgrades, you still don't end up with the recommended power to score a condor because you got screwed over by RNG. So once you have the club you need and the correct weather condition, tee length, and cup, which change daily by the way, only then can you attempt this. And to finally land one condor could take anywhere from your first attempt to your 100th attempt. It's pretty much all luck. Then once you do it one time, you have to do it 2 more times. It's actually pretty wild. The sad part, or the cool part, I guess, if you already got it, is that this platinum has now become unobtainable since the online servers were shut down on September 30th of 2022. Despite everything, the reason I don't have this higher on the list is because this platinum is kind of in the same vein as Yakuza, where it's not necessarily the difficulty of the trophies that make it tough to get, it's the amount of RNG and time required that makes me say never again. Next on this list, we have Final Fantasy IX. For those that don't know, Final Fantasy IX is an RPG. And if you were paying attention to what was said about Yakuza, then you remember that RPGs typically have a lot of things to do in them. This game is no exception. I picked this game up during a time when I didn't really have anything new to play and felt like playing an RPG since I had the time on my hands. And looking back on my time with it, I put it number 2 on my list. So is the platinum truly that difficult? Yes, but the truth is the game itself is not so difficult. The remastered port available on consoles is actually not difficult at all, honestly. See, Final Fantasy IX on consoles feature the inclusion of modifiers that range from high speed mode, where the game runs at 4 times the speed, to one where every hit deals 9,999 damage, and even one that refills your HP and MP bar. I made sure to beat the game the first time without the use of any of these modifiers because I wanted to experience the story, combat, and challenge as originally intended, But frankly, if anyone wanted, they could just pick this game up and breeze through it immediately. Because of this, the vast majority of the trophies aren't necessarily difficult if playing with modifiers, but some trophies don't rely on combat, meaning even with the modifiers, they're still tedious and time consuming. So, although not hard, the trophies for this game aren't simple either. The real reason I have this as number two on my top five is because of two trophies that will likely prove to be the biggest obstacles, which are Bloodlust and Hail to the King. Let's begin with the former though. Bloodlust requires the player to defeat 10,000 enemies. On paper, this doesn't sound too bad, but in reality, this trophy is a ridiculous grind. Even after beating the game and completing all side quests and optional content, the grind can still take anywhere from 10 to 15 plus hours to complete. The grind can be made painless with the help of a turbo controller or scripting software on a PC using remote play, but otherwise, this is an absolute slog. You'd pretty much have to hold the left stick in place so you're constantly running around getting into random encounters, and then just continuously mash X with the high speed and 9999 modifiers active. But 10 to 15 plus hours of rubber banding your left stick and mashing X doesn't sound too bad in comparison to all the time it takes to finish everybody's golf. So why is that number three and this number two? Well, that's because of the next trophy we're going to talk about. Hail to the King. This trophy, similar to Bloodlust, is very easy on paper. Jump rope 1,000 times without tripping. It's funny how the very hardest trophy in this game is also one that you can acquire at the very beginning if you so please. The jump rope minigame is first made available to the player soon after they gain control of the character at the start of the game. Once you start, you have to tap X at a rhythm to successfully jump the rope. Unfortunately, though, the jumps will require faster inputs due to more strict timing at different milestones. At 50, 100, 200, and 300 jumps, the rhythm of which you need to tap X will change, getting faster and faster each interval. The jumps between 200 to 300 is normally the most infamous because the game will have you do a sort of galloping double tap of X. After 300, it's pretty much a quick rhythmic tap of X for the rest of the way. This will require a lot of patience and practice. Essentially, if you plan to go for this trophy, you will be tapping in perfect rhythm for roughly 7 to 8 minutes straight. One minor screw up can and will cause you to mess up and trip. That means something as simple as a phone notification ringtone has the potential to, for a split second, throw you off your game and cause you to trip and start over. Thankfully, this is another trophy that can technically be made easier thanks to the help of software. People have written scripts for this game that, when executed on a PC, will do the 1,000 jumps for the player with small trial and error. However, for the purposes of this list, I wanted it to be with the assumption of no turbo controllers or the help of a PC. Because of this, believe it or not, in my opinion, the obstacle of having to jump rope 1,000 times in a row makes this a far harder platinum than the 3 games that came before. If you don't believe me, go for it and see. And finally, for the hardest platinum I've gotten out of the 57 so far, Aliens Fireteam Elite. When I think back on this game and the work it took for me to earn this platinum, I just remember how committed I was. When I say earn, I mean earn. I was just living and breathing this game for a point in time. It was all I could think about when working towards the platinum. The previous platinums had some difficult trophies along the way, but none as difficult as the trophy for beating this game on the insane difficulty. Only 0.5% of players on PSN have earned this platinum, and 0.6% have beaten the campaign on insane. For registered users of PSN profiles, 5.52% have earned the platinum, and 6% have completed the game on insane. But I'm willing to bet the bulk of the players that have done it, me included, owe it to an exploit that was soon patched out. Otherwise, I guarantee those numbers will be a lot lower. The exploit was one that allowed 5 players to play at once, and even then, this game was no joke. But before I get into it, let me just quickly go over what this game is. Aliens Fireteam Elite is a co-op third-person survival shooter. It's a PvE experience where a team of 3 completes various missions while tackling on different enemies from the Aliens franchise. The game has 4 campaigns with 3 missions each for a total of 12 missions. It has 5 difficulties: casual, standard, intense, extreme, and insane. Of course, the harder the difficulty, the greater the challenge, and the more and more likely you are to fail playing with randoms. But that's just how these types of games are, though. And the reason I mentioned it is because if you aren't someone who's comfortable communicating on voice chat and finding people to play with on forums, for example, then don't even bother going after this platinum. I'm not sure how active the community is anymore, but the Fireteam subreddit and Discord was absolutely essential to me finding like-minded players who wanted to succeed at Insane just as bad as me. It was also essential for heeding the words of those who had succeeded on Insane before me. Just as important, though, as finding teammates willing to communicate and strategize was the discovery of an exploit that allowed 5 players to be on a fire team at once instead of the normal 3. This meant you had extra firepower, abilities, medkits, and eyes with you on a mission. But I was only able to take advantage of this exploit for about half of the missions before it finally got patched out. It was unfortunate back at that time because not only were the missions still incredibly hard with 5 people and the likelihood of the friendly fire also higher, but the game was actually even more fun playing it this way. But once the patch happened, none of that mattered. All I knew was that I was halfway there and I had to find a way to grind out the rest of the missions with the group I was running with. My teammates and I literally had to memorize missions, enemy spawns, different strats, and play as perfect as we could. This trophy and beating this game on Insane was one of the most difficult things I've ever accomplished in all my years of gaming. I can't stress it enough how difficult I found it to be. The game is super fun and I can't recommend it enough to people, especially if you have friends to play with. But because of the amount of effort I had to put into completing this feat, I truly never want to play this game ever again.
Hey, this man just, I don't want to do this no more.
So there you have it, people. Those are the 5 hardest platinums I've earned so far out of my 57. Like I said, I'm sure there are plenty of much harder platinums out there, but this was me sharing 5 from my list of games. However, I would love to hear about some of your difficult platinums over the years. So comment down below any tough platinum that stands out in your mind, and I'll be sure to give it a look. If I find it interesting enough, who knows? Maybe I'll go for it myself and make a video about it. As always, my name is WalkingSaint. Peace.